Uma kusana ngamata ikira chidai. Uma kusana ngamata ikira chid. Uki umi tanak pafiani.
So she has Wawi and has Awi, which I kind of think she learned from some of the videos that she watches. Awi and Wawi, of course, homophones. And sometimes they mean synonyms to her. All right. So this is what goes on in constructing their own language. So this applies to a child that is learning how to sign. There's a whole lot of gesture acquisition or gesture incorporation that a child has to do to be able to graduate to a conventional signing system. But now we are talking about a conventional signing system as if there was one in an environment the setting that I'm describing and I'm more concerned about. I'm talking about a deaf child growing in an environment there's no conventional signing, or rather, even if there is an unpopular one. A deaf child that is rather growing to find themselves in home signing system because they have to develop something. Studies about home sign shows that they are full of gestures that over time, if used over time, they will have to grow up to become sign language. A child dealing with this is doing a lot of work in trying to carry on with gestures alongside signing, or graduate from gesturing or full-time to signing. And this is an important aspect of our discussion. I know you know about the ideology that says that deaf children own language. That is absolutely true. Hearing children also own language, because that is when language is expected to start developing. And studies show that children develop up to 80% of the language they speak in life. And if this happens, so it applies to sign languages too, depending on what environment a child grows. And because of this, we do not try to correct a child in what they sign and what they articulate. And if a child grows up bringing a lot of gesture into the communication, day-to-day communication, that is the only thing they know, that is what they might grow up until possibly they see a different kind of communication. The question is, how does a child that doesn't have speech develop signing? This is vital for us to ask, because the deaf children who started signing as children, possibly who were integrated into a signing family, a signing community, they are called native signers. Just like you, who speak your language that you acquired, nobody taught you, not even your mom, your dad, you are a native speaker of your language. Every other language you happen to speak in life becomes your language 2, your language 3, or as the case may be, except whereby a child acquires 2 languages simultaneously. So it becomes arguable if the 2 of them are the child's L1, or one is still L1, based on some factors that linguists will argue in the classroom. And I'm not there always, so I try to dwell in the community. So that's where I belong, where I try to describe these things with less scientific terminology, but still make sure that I do not drift a lot, but then make communication happen. All right. So both in signing and in speaking, the use of language by a native speaker is very obviously different in many cases from the use of language by a non-native speaker. Speaker, I mean both signer and speaker. So native signers, deaf native signers, can use a lot of gesture which may be dropping when they acquire a conventional sign language, or when they have interaction and there is language contact and their signing is being refined. This happens over time. But these gestures, one way or the other, continue to be part of the signing system. And the studies that have been done on this claim that this happens in many languages. And now, we that are dealing with indigenous sign languages that are not sign languages developed enough to be languages of education, developed enough to be languages used in sophisticated environment to discuss sophisticated issues. You can imagine how much gestures that we see in the signing system of the deaf signers. Now, but the issue is, it is important for deaf signers to understand that even if you think it is gesture, it is part of the signing system. It could be gesture, as at that time, it could also end up becoming a sign in the signing system if that sign language is developed. So for a child that is growing up acquiring sign language, there's going to be a lot of gesture. And part of the gestures that you could see, scholars believe gestures include pointing, which linguists give one scientific name, diaetics. And I don't know what that means, but pointing to what extent that we can expand that, pointing at a person, pointing in a space, pointing in time past, in time present, and in the future. All these have basic meanings in our signing system, as much as they have in our speech also, whether it is a speech gesture or gesture standalone. They all make a lot of meaning in our communication. It is very important to note and to know that part of what is forming a very large interest of the linguists in sign language studies today is the relationship between gesture and signs. So the gestural sign, or what may look like that, I want to show you as an example today, is a gestural sign that signifies name that we collected in Mogajingari deaf community. I think it's a popular sign for name in the deaf communities in northern part of Nigeria. So you ask about your name like this: what is your name? Your name is what? And this sign comes from the fact that when a child is born, there is going to be the slaughtering of a ram. There's going to be the slaughtering of an animal, most times a ram or a cow. And this sign comes from that gesture that a ram is slaughtered. But today, by our collection, it is a conventional sign. It is a conventional sign that means name. The rest of the movement, from the throat to the asking of what, goes with some facial expression to indicate that what is your name in that sign language. Okay, so if a person that doesn't understand the implication of this sign that signifies name might just try to guess the meaning of it by delving into iconicity, right? Okay, trying to say, oh yeah, it looks like this or that. Of course, that's one of the things that gestures do in signing, to show us how the motion and shapes that you make and everything look like the real thing, All right, so in today's video, I decided to bring about the issue of the child learning sign language, the deaf child. How do they deal with the signing and gesture? Is another way of bringing the role that gestures play in signing in our topic of child language development. And so I will stop this topic here today, and because there's a whole lot to talk about in child language development, and I know we are going to go to the end of it, and I know you are going to go with me to the end of it, and I keep saying there's a lot for us to learn together. So I appreciate you for your time, and I'm gonna see you next week. All right, until then, please stay safe, and let's continue to support the work we're doing in Indigenous Hands, the Indigenous Voices, which is brought to you by Save the Deaf and Endangered Languages Initiative. See you. Bye.